Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I'm really excited for today's blueprint. This really took me many, many years of my life. A lot of training, a lot of failures, a lot of different experiences to put this together. And so, although this might feel like a simple system and framework, just know that it's taken from quite a lot of complexity into something that's simple to understand that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So, as always, give me a second to open comments. Hello to everyone that's here on the replay as well. I know that a lot of you guys have messaged me to tell me that you've got different things happening. So not everyone can be live, but it doesn't matter. This is going to be saved in one of the guides within the Facebook group, which you can come back to again and again and again. So I don't know why, but I always feel the need to present what I'm drinking every time I teach. If you guys watch the Shamanic Map, you'll see that I did that. And so if you're thinking to yourself, Hannah, what is that very orange liquid that you're drinking? I drink something for my adrenals, which is orange juice and salt. It's like an adrenal tonic, and it's really, really good for the nervous system. We were talking about this in the certification training that I ran yesterday. But if you're wondering to yourself that, what is that disgusting, like very bright yellow drink that Hannah's drinking? There's your answer. I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes to make their way to the live if you're watching live with me today. And then I'm going to begin. So good morning, Anita. As you're coming on, whether you're coming on now live or you're coming to the replay, I'd love for you to drop into the chat. What do you want to get out of this masterclass? So as you came into the Facebook group, lots of you guys have come in for the masterclass, and a lot of you guys were already part of the Shamanic Map. But with the questions when people came in that we've had for the masterclass, it's been interesting to see the variety of topics that people want to work on within the business context. Okay. And I know a lot of people come and train with me in very different professions. Not everyone is an online business digital owner. A lot of people are realtors, or they sell art, or they come from a corporate job, right? We've got lots of people, or they're trading. We had someone reach out recently that was a trader, okay? So we get lots and lots of people from different business backgrounds. Now, my focus for multidimensional business is going to be scaling digitally for the physical plane. Now, everything else that I share is going to apply to every other industry, but I want to make sure that I'm clear that when we go through the physical plane, which is one of the first chunks of work that we're going to do within this blueprint, it is geared towards people scaling digitally. But the concepts can be applied to any industry. And then when we get to the emotional, mental, spiritual, and energetic bodies of business, again, we're speaking to way more careers, okay? But I would love to see, whether you're watching the replay later or if you're listening now, what do you want to learn about business? When you think about like your next level of success, we had a huge amount of people that came through to the group. We put, where are you? Starting out, I can't remember the exact words, starting out, there was like a middle one, making money but want to make more, already successful but want multidimensional expansion, right? There was a lot of you guys that are coming here that are already successful. A lot of you guys have made income already, but you want to take it to that next level. And so something that I want you to contemplate as you watch this, right? What's between you and that next level of income? What's between you and that next level of cash? Hello, Fear. I'm like, what is that word? What is between you and that next level that you want to bring in? Now, for some of you guys, it's not even necessarily a next level in income. It's a next level in personal fulfillment. It's a next level in actually enjoying your business success. It's a next level in purpose. The multidimensional business system will increase your income. I believe increased income is part of a life well lived, right? I teach something called the science of getting rich in all of my communities, which is how money actually allows us to do more in the world, right? I'm able to work with so many clients because I'm able to pay my team to be able to, sustain a business that helps that many clients, right? So money is a mechanism of service in the world. So that's part of the multidimensional business system. But also the way that we scale businesses is very different to what you've probably seen online before, in the fact that we scale from the inside out. And we do look at scaling from each body. Okay. And so the byproduct of this is not just a business that makes more money, it's a business that feels better to run. It's a business that you enjoy scaling. It's a business that is as good for you spiritually as it is materially. And this is quite a new thing for some people. Anita says, I would love to work on leveling up the business and tightening up my bookkeeping and organization of the business, how it grows. Amazing. Love it. Okay, let's get into what we're doing. So I'm going to respond to some of the questions as we go, and please feel free to drop in anything to the chat as we go, right? But my main focus for these 2 hours, and if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at the watch, from 3 to 5 p.m. CET, is to make sure that you've got a framework, okay? So I'm going to be very, very focused more on content than maybe interaction. Sometimes when we do the longer events, there's more space for interaction, but this is really a 2-hour blueprint, and I've got a lot of information to teach, a lot of information to share, right? So I appreciate you guys being live. I love the fact that you guys are here, and I will be checking the chat, right? But just know my main focus is making sure that you guys have got the whole blueprint, okay? And for those of you guys that are listening to this, I love the fact that you've made the time, right, to spend these 2 hours learning about how to upgrade your life. And if we just come into this from the thinking of these 2 hours could change my life, because sometimes we come to things and we think, oh, it's just a masterclass, like it's not going to be that good, and we can come in with resistance, right? And when we're in resistance, subconsciously, we're looking for holes instead of listening for the tiny little thing that's going to change your life. So I want you guys to make sure, however many times you've heard me talk about multidimensional business, whether you're a current client, whether you're someone that's just come across my work, whether you're someone that's in a good phase of business or a challenging phase of business, we want to practice listening for the sentence, the piece, the thing that changes everything for you. Okay, whilst also understanding that this is a free masterclass and it's not a full training course. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that you have something tangible that you can implement after this, or an insight that you would have never heard of or thought of before. And we understand that this is still a free experience and it's not a full training course. Okay, amazing. Brilliant. So, like I said, my goal of this training is to give you a framework which always works. Okay, no matter the level that you're at, it works as a diagnostic tool as well as a system to scale. Okay, this system uses practical, proven strategies, right, including internal strategies and external strategies. And these are things that work if you're a complete beginner or if you're someone that's scaled multiple businesses. I've had clients from people that have made zero, like literally from the beginning, to people that I've worked with, people that have done multi-8-figure payouts and sold businesses for multiple 8 figures. And I've worked with that whole range. This system is applicable at every stage, okay? Because it's internal and external. Now, what I want you guys to know is that there's also no one else teaching this. You're not going to find this on YouTube, because this is my proprietary system that I've put together after many, many years of working with a lot of people. And I will speak to that as well. Okay. Now, make sure that you watch until the end, because I'm going to be sharing some deals that are only available from today until Monday. Okay. And deals that we're talking like 60 to 70% off. So you don't want to miss that, right? So make sure that you listen to the final chunk where I go into it. Okay, quick background. Who am I? Why should you care? Why should you listen to a business training by me? Okay, now, most of you guys here, I would say a large majority, have watched the Shamanic Map. And so you've heard about my story in the sense of, having mental health issues, having health issues, my mum dying, and kind of the healing arc that led to integrative healing, right? And you guys have heard me talk about it took me the best part of 13 years, right? When people say, oh, the certification is 25,000, I'm like, yeah, it took $250,000 and 13 years. Be my guest. Go do it yourself and put it together. Like, if you want to do that, if you're one of those people, be my guest. Or you can just train with me, right? And I talked about that in the Shamanic Map. I've invested thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of putting this work together. And this is because this is my life's work, right? It's not a hard thing for me. It's not a strain. It's not a struggle. It's like what I've decided to dedicate my life to. It's actually very, very enjoyable for me, right? And so I talk about how I share the most effective modalities and the integrative healing system within the global uni, okay? But I didn't really talk about business as much in the Shamanic Map. Now, just like in healing, I've studied with like the, trauma healers, spiritual healers, practical healers, nutrition, like all of these different modalities. And then I saw that it fit together in a system. For business, it's been a really similar story. Now, what I want to start with this, and some of you guys need to hear this. When I started business, a business journey, right? My experience in business was waitressing and working with children with disability and a yoga teacher. I had no business background. This was 7 years ago. Like literally no business background. I was unqualified for the gig. But I had something that people with incredible business backgrounds don't have. And that one thing has been the thing that led to the success. And that was this decision internally that my success and my healing was not optional. I did not tiptoe into business hoping that it would work. Please remember that from 15, my dad got cancer. From 19, my mum got cancer. My mum passed away when I was 26. And when my mum passed away, it was this big thing for me because, she'd always said, when I retire, I'm going to do this. And when I retire, I'm going to do that. And it was so confronting to realize she never got to do a huge array of things because she always thought that there was more time. And so I kind of came into this business journey, not because, I was so excited to make money, but because my mum was ill. And if I had an employer and they said to me, Han, the hospital called and said, Han, there's been a scan, your mum needs to go and do this or whatever it is. With a normal employer, I didn't have the option of just leaving work. Whereas if I decided to be self-employed, right, then I could choose my schedule. And that's honestly the reason that I began growing a business, okay? Firstly, it was functionality because of how my life was set up. But secondly, it was because I realized that the time was now because we never know what's around the corner. And because I realized that just living days does not mean that you will become more fulfilled. You have to choose. And so I used to have a catchphrase at the end of all of my emails when I began. I'd always say success is a choice. Success is a choice. And I chose success. And some of you guys are going, is it going to work? I hope it doesn't work. And you're making investments from this really fearful place. And you're kind of like this half in, half out. And you're sending out these really mixed signals to the universe. And the universe is like, do they want it? Do they not want it? Right? It's like, imagine you go to the airport and you go to buy a ticket and you say, I kind of want to go to Barbados, but maybe I want to go to Italy and maybe I want to go to Rome, but I don't know if I like Rome, but maybe I should go to, what about, the ticket officer is going to say, well, I'm not going to send you anyway or anywhere until you decide where you want to fucking go, right? And so I began my business journey with the choice. I am successful and whatever I do works. And I only make the right choices. And I am living my life now because I don't know what there's going to be tomorrow. And this is not an urgent, scared, frightened thing. It's presence and it's intentionality. I did the same when it came to my healing journey. Having chronic health problems was not an option for me, right? Having chronic mental health problems was not an option for me. And so I started with the decision of I am going to find health. I started business with the decision of I am success. And that's what led to the manifestations of things that came next. Now, this is such an important distinction that's going to make more sense when you've listened to the whole multidimensional blueprint together. But remember, we choose the result. We choose where we land. And again, energy plane, I'll come back to it later. Okay, so about 8 years ago, I came to network marketing. And this was, again, like I said, a desperate solution to not having a boss. This was my mum's final year of life, right? And so I was doing network marketing. I was working as a teaching English because I did a TEFL course. I was teaching English to children in Spain in person, and I was teaching English to Chinese children on a platform called Dada, where they rated you and you had to do these puppet shows, and it was ridiculous, and I was exhausted, and I had a lot of health problems, right? And I was doing network marketing at the same time, right? Now, a lot of people have a lot of negative things to say about network marketing, but a lot of people love to complain. My opinion is I learned things in network marketing that were helpful, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So about 7 years ago, I decided to go it alone. And this was a really scary time, because sometimes when you make a choice, like I'm gonna do the thing, all of the old things fall away. So suddenly all of my children that I was teaching English to started cancelling. They were moving to Madrid. This person was sick. They lost a job. They couldn't afford it anymore. And I was suddenly left in a position, like I was speaking to before, I wasn't doing 4 things. I was committing to the business, right? Now, simultaneously, about 7 years ago, right, was when my mum passed away, and I was starting to piece together my integrative healing system, and I was realizing that my relationships were changing, my health was changing, like everything was changing. It's so funny for me to think back then, because I feel like a completely different person. I feel like I'm healthier at 33, and I talked about this in the certification yesterday when we were doing the physical body, than I felt at 25, because I had so many chronic health problems at 25, right? And so I kind of had this epiphany of, well, what if I apply my approach that I applied to healing to business? Right? And so I started, just like I did in healing, right, working with all of these different modalities, I started investing in different types of business coaches. So people that were more energetic, people that were, more consulting. I've worked with people like Brendan Kane, which is very masculine business. And I've worked with bro scalers, and I've worked with very inner work people. And what I realized, right, because everyone's trying to fight over who's right in the marketing world, they were all right. But the problem that we find and we think is that different approaches mean that the other one isn't correct. I noticed that success really started to happen for me when I listened to all of them, but I put the different ways of building in the different planes of business, which is what the multidimensional business blueprint is, and I'm going to speak to, right? Now, about 5 years ago, I opened Integrative Healing. That's where I really went in on this program, and this is where I really committed to business. And it was incredible, because my first year of business, we did 180,000, which was mind-blowing. My second year of business, we did 530,000. And we've just done over 2 million. And I am the girl that my longest job prior to setting up a business was being a waitress. I was once told by an American business coach to not tell people that, because it lost my credibility. And I think absolute fucking bollocks to that. Because it shows you that if you are willing to self-educate and you are determined, right, nothing about your past determines your future. Now, in this business journey, we've had 6-figure weeks. I had a $250,000 launch, nearly 1 year and 3 months into business, right? We've had repeated 6-figure weeks through different strategies. It's not bad for the girl that had no business experience. And so, like I said, how did I do it? I trained with many people, and I see integration of systems, not competition. I can see how multiple truths in business exist in unison, right? My multidimensional business system uses that shamanic framework that I spoke about within the Shamanic Map, but it includes work from consultants, from people that I've worked with that are super strong in mindset, energetic strategists, influencer coaches. And I've realized that business, just like the Shamanic Map for healing and life creation, isn't just physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual, and it's energetic. And when you master all 4 of these planes, success is inevitable. You literally cannot fail, right? And from that awareness, I created the multidimensional business system. And this is finally a system that blends all 4 aspects of business, right? So you guys don't have to go and spend hundreds of thousands working with as many people as I worked with, but not just it's the hundreds of thousands, it's the hours, right? In trying, testing, working, putting together, integrating. When I say I've dedicated my life to this, like I live and breathe this work. Craig said to me yesterday, and we were quite humoured by it. We were watching a documentary, and I'm going to mention it a few times. It's called Men and War on Netflix, and it's really good. I recommend you guys to watch it. It's a really good take on personal development for maybe men that don't fit the normal spiritual categories, right? And basically you see them going on these plant medicine journeys, but in a very safe, facilitated clinical space, right? Which I think is really important. And, you know, they were talking about all of these experiences that they have with the plants. And I was saying to Craig, oh, I enter those states anyway. Something that I've trained myself with the shamanic work that I do, and this happens for people within the certification, is that you're able to access a lot of psychic states. We call it psychic. It's just, it exists in all of us, right? And so I was saying this to him. I was like, oh yeah, I've had an experience like that. And obviously plant medicine will be increased. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying that we can access those states internally anyway. And he goes to me and he says, I feel like you always live in those states. And it was kind of a joke, but then he said, but I'm not even joking, right? It's like, for me, life is the spiritual journey. Business is the spiritual journey. My life is dedicated to this. When I'm not teaching this, I'm studying this. When I'm not studying this, I'm working with people and training in this and improving it. And you're going to see, you know, even our clients, even if we did a blueprint 2-3 years ago, every single year you get the next level. Because I'm always increasing my knowledge, because I'm committed to passing that down. I take my job as a coach, as a mentor, as a healer, as a teacher, as a voice, very seriously, okay? And I'm now going to start taking you through this multiple dimensional system. We're going to begin with the physical body. I'm just going to check chat. Hello, Gracie. Yay, I'm so happy that you're here. Brilliant. Okay. So the multidimensional business system has got 4 planes. We've got the physical plane of business, and that's what people think business is. They don't think there's anything else to it. We've got the emotional, mental plane of business. We've got the spiritual plane of business, and we've got the energetic plane of business. Okay? We're going to go through each plane, and at the end, I'm going to speak to how we can implement all 4 planes using a few steps that I think, from my experience and working and seeing and training and teaching, right, in front of thousands of people, the things that I've seen that lead to people getting results / not, even though they've got the same information. Okay? So, who here watched the Shamanic Map? Because in the Shamanic Map, we spoke about a concept. And this concept came through for me this year because I've been working so much on my physical health. Not because I had a problem in my physical health, but because I knew there was a higher level of health available to me. And I'm the type of person that wants to experience that. My clients are the same, right? Now, one of the major concepts in the Shamanic Map is that instead of lowering our goals to meet a depleted and exhausted body, we raise the level of our health, right, to hold our goals. And this is actually what we were talking about in the certification yesterday. Gracie, who's in the cert, who is, I think, in the chat now listening as she's driving, right? We were talking about how we can build physiological resilience, right, as part of high performance. So we work with the body, not against the body. And this is a really big thing I teach, okay? So in the Shamanic Map, where we're looking at raising the level of our health and resilience to match our goals instead of lowering our goals to match a not looked after body. In the business version of the Shamanic Map, which is the multidimensional business system, right, it's similar. We need a solid business foundation that is able to achieve the goals that you want, right, in a way that feels secure and safe, okay? In a nutshell, your business model, your strategies, your systems has to match the income you want to generate. And you have to pick a business model that also fits the lifestyle that you want. There are many ways to roam. There are many ways to hit the same income goal, to hit the same service goal, right? But you get to pick the way that fits the type of lifestyle that you want to have. This is why I teach a plethora of business strategies. I do not just teach people, this is what I did, because we are all different. And what I did is not a match for everyone, right? But that doesn't mean that you don't need a business model. And the reason that I start with this is that I obviously teach a lot of spiritual teachings. I do a lot of personal development work, and I teach business. And so there is a misconception in the spiritual world, right? that because I think a lot of spiritual businesses have appeared since maybe 2020, that you can just manifest a dream business. You can't. Manifestation is part of business, and you might be surprised to hear me teach this. Bear in mind, I teach the Shamanic Map, I teach manifestation, I teach so many things on energetics. I teach so much about mastering energy. I teach energy medicine, I teach manifestation. But if I only did that, I would not make the income that I've made. I would not be making it. There is no way that I would have hit the goals that I have. Everything that I've done to be where I am is strategic and energetic, right? And so the problem is when you think that you don't need to be strong in business, right? And you avoid structure and you avoid having a foundation because you think spirituality is superior to material, which happens very often for people that have been in corporate or they've been in careers where they've seen maybe a lot of human shadows around money, right, and around business. What happens, they have this overcorrection. For some of you guys, this will be true, and I'm saving you years of your life if you listen to this, right, in the overcorrection. Sometimes you've got to have the experience, but if you can listen to this and really hear this, it will be helpful, right? They reject the structure, the material, all of the parts that actually make a business because they see spirituality as superior. And so what happens, because you've got no foundation, is that your nervous system is going to feel frightened. You're going to enter survival mode in your nervous system because there's nothing holding you, right? And so not only is not having a business foundation going to lead to not predictable income, right? Not a predictable business model, not having a strong foundation, it's also going to lead to a heightened fear response. And this fear response is actually helpful because it's telling you we don't have strong foundations. When I first taught the business system that I'm teaching with you now, the multidimensional business system, I talked about the Victoria sponge cake. Okay, now for those of you guys that aren't British, a Victoria sponge cake has here, what's it called? Sponge, jam, cream, sponge. Okay, and so this is like the multidimensional business system. We've got the bottom, which is the sponge, right? Is the practical, the physical, the emotional, mental is the jam, the spiritual is the cream, and then the energetic is the sponge on top. Now, if you've got a very weak bottom to the cake, right? If you've got a very crumbly, not strong foundational sponge to that cake, no matter how beautiful, organic that jam is, how delicious, handmade that cream is, how fantastic that top sponge is, that energetic mastery is, your cake is going to break. It's going to crumble. You can only expand in your body into your goals, right? You can only expand as much as your body can hold. In business, you can only expand as much as your business model can hold. It's so important. And so many clients, because I get people that come from very business space that want to have more of the other stuff, and I get people that come from the very spiritual space that want to have more of the business stuff. I work with both ends, okay? Because in the end, the solution is the same. You need all planes, right? But I have clients that come to me from these spiritual communities where they've believed you could just manifest everything, and that they've got no launch model, no client attraction model. They've got nothing in place, and they tell me, well, I made 10, 15K this month, and then I made 20K, and then I made 0, and then I made 3K, and then I made 20K, and then I made 2K, and then I made 1K, right? And they say to me, and they think, what's wrong with me? They come with this feeling like, what's wrong with me? Am I broken? Is it? And I say to them very often, your income makes sense for your business model. Sometimes they come to me and they've not been able to build traction, and they just think that it shouldn't feel hard if they've got manifestation, right? And I'm like, looking at your business model, you are making the amount of money that you should be making because you have nothing strategic down. Now, I'm also, and something that I've learned through my years, very psychic when it comes to business. I've done so much personal development work prior to business that very often for my first 2 years of business, when we scaled so rapidly, right, a lot of it was intuitive. And I speak to how you can hone this business psychic intuition in the energetic plane as well, right? But even with that intuition, even with very often channeling strategies and doing all of that, I still have a business model, right? Let me give you another example of this, is that when I began and we had our first 6-figure year, I was running an organic group model. And it was when I shifted my group model to a membership model that we 5x'd our income. And when I started adding solid lead generation and conversion mechanisms, right, that increase sustained. So it was practical things that I did in the physical body that led to increases, as much as internal shifts. So the solution for those of you guys that have been resistant to business is that accepting you have to learn business and you have to train in business, and it is not lower than spirituality, because all 4 planes are equal, right? If you actually want your business to thrive. Okay, I'm going to talk about the 6 pillars of the physical body of the multidimensional business system. Now, obviously, because this is a masterclass, I can't go into depth of each thing, but it would be helpful for you guys to write this down, because this is going to be something for you to look at and ask yourself, am I strong in all of these things? Now, something that I want to say is some of you guys actually in your physical body, you're really strong. And when we get to the rest, you'll realize that's where your gaps are. And this is why I say the multidimensional business system is a diagnostic tool. You can see, oh, where are my gaps? And when you find those gaps, that's the key to you scaling, right? Not everyone is going to have weak spots and strong spots in all points. But the idea is if you know the whole system, you can close the gaps, right? And celebrate the wins. And that's going to lead to income increasing and everything else internally increasing too. I want to make sure I can see this. Beautiful. Amazing. Anita's dropping a tick there. Okay. 6 pillars of health in the physical body of business. Your business model. Like I said, going from a group program launch model, and I only had that, to a membership model, and creating simple memberships that are sustainable and scalable. Okay, guys, I do about 3 to 4 calls a week maximum, right? Because I'm someone that wants to have a large impact, but also have an enjoyable personal life. And I'm not someone that likes being on a bazillion calls a day. Okay, some people love a bazillion calls. Then you pick a different business model. But what I'm saying is that shift in business model from something that is a little bit more kind of these feast famine cycles to something that's sustainable and scalable, that had natural profit pathways, right, where people could keep increasing with us from up to 4 years. I've had some clients that have been with us for 5 years now, from the beginning to now, and they've joined and they've paid and they've locked in contracts until the end of 2026. And that's because my business model is built for my people, right? I literally have built my business model thinking about what my people need. And that's why people stay. You don't have to stay, of course, but that's why some people choose to stay. But it's also sustainable and scalable in the sense that, right, it's not depleting me to run, in the sense that I'm not on calls from 7 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, right? And it's what we've actually done to scale, by the way. This is another thing, because we're going through another exponential growth peak. What we've actually done to scale is simplify even more and shift our business model for that next level. And so having a knowledge of business model, what programs to set up, how to set up your offers, like all of this stuff is really important. A lot of people just go on Instagram, see someone's doing a group membership and go, oh, I'm going to do a group membership. And it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that it fits. It doesn't make sense. So your business model needs to be solid, and it needs to be sustainable, and it needs to be scalable, and it needs to be in alignment to the lifestyle that you want to live. My business model is very different to my partner's business model. His business model is all around premium one-to-ones, and he works with, you know, family offices, very, very ultra high net worth families, okay? Because that fits him and his skill set. And so we picked a different business model because of our unique differences. And this is actually something that I teach. Well, I teach many business models within the multidimensional business system. One, which is a program that I'm going to speak to you guys at the end. But I've also got a program within the Global Uni framework called the social media technique, which is where you use your gene keys, your human design, and all of these kind of patterns in that we can see through our unique kind of birth blueprint. It actually tells you what business model is a match to you. And that's going to save you years of guesswork. Okay, so business model is number one. Number two is a repeatable client acquisition system. So many spiritual people don't want to speak to that, but like if you don't speak to that, then you're going to be in this constant fight or flight, feast famine cycle. You need to know, right, where new clients are coming from. You need to have your work in front of new people. Your audience growth needs to be predictable and repeatable. I know predictable and repeatable and sustainable and scalable aren't sexy words. We're looking for like exponential. And yes, you can do that with energetics, but you also need predictability and repeatability, right? This is why in my upcoming business training, which I will be talking about soon, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to use simple ads for 20 euros a day, right? That can add like up to around 700 new emails a month. That's life-changing for your business, right? It's taken me about probably the 7 or 8 years that I've been in business to actually grow my social media following. It's only really happened this year. I found it very hard. Because some internal stuff, which I'll speak about in the emotional mental body, around being seen, I found that very frightening, right? But also finding a strategy that's easy because what we do for social media is easy. And my social media grows from 10 to 95 people a day at the moment. We're averaging about 30 to 50 people, which is way beyond what the average metric is for people using this strategy. And that's because my messaging is dialed in, my content is dialed in, right? But you've got to think, right? In terms of repeatable client acquisition lead generation systems, my email list is growing hundreds of people a month, and my social media is averaging about 1,100 people a month as well. That's so many eyes seeing this work. So I don't have to be pushy. I don't have to be chasing people because there's an abundance of people seeing this, which means we can find the right people for this work. Another important thing in client acquisition is what I call the loyalty effect, a strong referral system. So our business in times has only grown through referrals. We've got a very, very strong referral metric. Lots of people refer us, right? And again, that's not something that's happened by accident. That's something that I've set up. Now, obviously, your quality of work has to be good for that to work as well, but you also need referral systems. So business model, repeatable client acquisition, messaging that converts, repeatable conversion mechanisms. So what I mean by that is if you're in front of 1,000 new people a month and you've got nothing that converts them repeatedly, then you've got a problem because you've got lots of fans and you've got no money, right? You can be amazing at what you do, but if you don't know how to convert people predictably and strategically, then you're going to be very talented but broke, right? Or very talented and stuck at a glass financial ceiling. And so I teach many conversion mechanisms, live launching, masterclasses like you're on now, right? I'm obviously going to share with you guys your next step off this. And you can make a choice yourself about whether that's something you'd like to do, right? Cash injection strategies, DMs, right? I teach all of these conversion mechanisms. So you've not just got eyes on you. Lots of people are like, oh, I'm going to do an influencer campaign. I'm going to do all of these campaigns. But if the campaign hasn't got a conversion mechanism, you're just going to be seen, but nothing's going to change for you financially. And if you're running a business, you need to have an ROI on things. You can't run a charity, right? Like you won't actually be able to continue running the business if it's not making repeatable income, because how do you pay your team? All of the things like this. So business model, client acquisition, messaging, repeatable conversion mechanism, delivery and client results. Part of the physical body is like, you've got to be good at what you do. Right? This is why in the certification, lots of people triple their income and triple their prices for sales of product, because they are now certain in that they can deliver a transformation because what we teach works every fucking time, right? And then they get the business knowledge on the side with that. And so it's just like this rocket shit up. Sixth thing, which Anita rocket ship up. Sixth thing that Anita spoke to is organization. This is unbelievable. Getting the rhythm of your business and organization of your business and year mapping of your business. That includes when you're going, when you're resting, when you're in expansion, when you're building out foundations, when you're scaling, when you're sustaining. Like, this is such a big part of scaling your business that no one speaks to, because everyone just thinks you've got to be on all of the time. But if you're on all of the time, what's going to happen is you're going to deplete. And if you deplete, the quality of your work gets worse, the quality of your marketing gets worse. And we even see this in natural systems, right? So with farming, we used to plant food, then after that was harvested, we'd let the soils, right, rest. We talked about this in the certification yesterday. The soil would get mineralized, right? And then we'd plant products again, and then the fruit and vegetables that we had, they had all of this mineralization, because when the soil is left to rest, it remineralizes itself. It's got more nutrition. Same with us. When we include rest in our productivity cycles, it's like our body regenerates and repairs. And when we go again, you've got this energy, you've got this inspiration, you've got this alignment that you don't have if you're on all of the time without pause. So something that I teach for my clients is something called $1 million, euro, whatever currency you use, organization, and launch plans that use natural cycles, right? That leverage rest as a way to make more money, that show you how to repeat harvests, but when to harvest. Because when you harvest, when you convert, is as important, right, as the conversion mechanism. In my VIP group today, one of my clients said to me, she had a live launch and I said, you need to do X, Y, and Z after this. And she had a lot of resistance to it because in her head, she was like, that doesn't make sense. And I was like, trust me, you need to double harvest. And she just sent an audio today and saying, thanks so much, Hannah, for sharing that the results are so different. And I'm like, yes, because I now know from watching launch energetics, harvest, double harvest, or how people purchase. This is all physical body. So as you scale, you have to think the foundation of the business also has to scale. The business foundation is a separate entity to you, right? It's simple maths. Now, this is why this year's Multidimensional Business 1 top up is primarily this work, right? And I'm also updating people on strategies that are working in 2025, right? That maybe weren't working prior, and what wasn't working, that is, because the thing is, emotional, mental plane, spiritual plane, and energetic plane, that's laws. That's always going to be true. Now, when it comes to strategies, practical strategies, sometimes there is fluctuation depending on, buyer behavior, market cycles, the economy, like things like that do actually impact the physical body of business, which is why it's slightly different to everything else and why I update strategies every single year, because I'm always on the leading edge, hiring people that are on the leading edge to see what's working and what's not working. And also with AI coming in, it's changing industries. And so we speak to that. Now, you've heard me speak about the multidimensional business system. So this is the multidimensional business blueprint that you're watching. But I've got a course that I do every single November called the Multidimensional Business System 1. And this is a 16-hour blueprint, right? Where we go through all of the 4 bodies in business, right? And I'm doing a top up this year, which is an 8-hour top up on top of this. So if you hear me speaking about, I teach this in the Multidimensional Business System, that's what I mean. I don't mean today, I mean the upcoming November course. And I'm going to share some deals that we've got for that if you're interested at the end. Okay, so I would like to see in the chat, whether you're watching this now or on the replay, business model 0 to 10. How strong do you feel that your business model is to be able to support you scaling to that next level of income and peace and profit and all of the good things, right? From 0 to 10, how strong is your repeatable client acquisition system? From 0 to 10, how strong is your messaging that converts? How strong do you feel that you know how to speak in a way that actually leads to conversion? 0 to 10, right? How strong are you on a repeatable conversion mechanism? 0 to 10, how strong are you on delivering client results? 0 to 10, how strong are you on knowing how to map your business effectively? Knowing when to harvest, when to rest, when to launch, things like this, right? I'm going to put this in the chat so you've got it. Anita says I'm mineralizing today. Oh my God, that's so funny. I love that. 0 to 10, okay? On. And I'm going to put them all into the chat so you've got them, right? This is so important. Business model. I'm going to put all 6 here. And also for those of you guys that have been in business for a long time, Just to be clear, I'm always every single year raising the bar on all of these 6 things, because every single level of scale requires a higher level of these things. Even if you're doing the exact same strategy, right? Your level of mastery needs to increase. Sometimes scaling isn't necessarily doing something different. It's doing what you've always done, but to a higher level of mastery. And someone listening to this needs to hear that. Because sometimes we chase shiny things without just raising our bar on what we know again and again and again. Okay, cool. So 0 to 10 on business model, 0 to 10 on repeatable client acquisition, 0 to 10 on messaging, 0 to 10 on repeatable conversion mechanism, 0 to 10 on delivery and client results, 0 to 10 on year mapping. So we've got different numbers in the chat. We've got some 5s, we've got a 2. I'd love to see that. If you're watching the replay as well, drop it in. And if there's any question that you want me to answer, you can drop it into the chat and tag me. And I will be able to answer some, maybe not all of them. Okay, so physical body, as you scale, the foundation also has to scale. Okay, that's it from a practical lens. Now, emotional and mental body. Okay, the emotional mental body is fascinating. Because in the emotional mental body, suddenly nothing is as it seems. Okay? This is what we call the jam in the multidimensional Victoria sponge cake. Okay? And we can make up the emotional mental body of limiting patterns, upper limits, and internal resistance around the physical steps. Okay? So limiting patterns we spoke to in the Shamanic Map, but let's speak to it in terms of business. Okay? Let's say you've got a new goal. Actually, let's start this here. The money that you are making right now, the level of finances that you're bringing, the level of fulfillment that you've got, the level of happiness that you've got with your business, you are currently a match to that, right? Internally, you're a match to your present reality. And I'm going to flesh out that law in the energy body. But for now, that's all you need to know. You are currently a match to whatever level of success you've got, okay? And now, when you pick a higher goal, automatically, that higher goal is going to require a version of you that has never existed before. And so just picking that goal, and we talk about this in the Terror Barrier, which is a session that we've got in here called Get Out of Your Own Way, which I recommend everyone watches, right? Just picking your goal is going to trigger your limiting patterns. Now, if we're not aware of this, the emotional mental body, instead of being the body of alchemy and transformation and receiving, becomes the plane of sabotage. This is why it's so important to understand. Okay, let's pick a goal. People that are listening, drop a goal into the chat and let's make this practical so you guys can see it. Amazing, great to see this. Year mapping fear is knowing how to organize your business with when to launch, when to start a program, organization things. I teach this in the social media technique, and I teach this in Multidimensional Business 1. And it's called, in Multidimensional Business 1, because you've got access to it, fear, it's called Million Euro Mapping. And in the social media technique, it's day 3. Okay, someone throw me a goal whilst I drink my very bright coloured juice. Don't be shy. Any goal. Okay, So I started my first free mastermind. I want 100 visionary leaders in paid masterminds across the next year. So you started your first free mastermind. Do you mean like that's your free like community space? Could you just clarify what you mean by that? Because there's a paid and there's a free there. Okay, we've got another goal. To get 5 people in my membership before the end of 2025, to sell what I sold last year whilst growing the staging business. Okay, I love that. I love that, Anita. Okay, I feel like I'm excited to see you in Morocco, Anita, and lots of our top 1 VIP people are coming to Morocco. Because I don't think I've heard about this staging business and I'm curious. So let's pick a simple one. The 5 people in a membership before the end of 2025, right? And actually, everyone that's thrown in a goal, let's do this together. As you think about choosing this goal, what comes up for you? What thoughts, what feelings, what fears, what hesitations, right? What sensible, smart, logical thinking comes through? Because the thing is, resistance comes through in smart, logical thinking. Resistance comes through in a sense of like, you know, we think that we're right because we're like the way that mind works. If there's a thought and the thought is, well, 5 sales is too many sales in that amount of time, and then mind says, well, I've never made 1 sale for this membership, so how do I know I'm going to make 5, right? Well, we think, well, we're being sensible there, right? And so it's really important to clean out our resistance, because if not, we're going to block the goal. So what are the thoughts that come through as you think of your goals? Right, thank you, Jasmine. It's a free launch mastermind, and I'll sell 5 into the paid mastermind before 2025. Okay, cool. So there's a kind of it's a launch system, and you want to do 5 paid sales. Amazing, brilliant, in 2025. Awesome. What thoughts come up around this that feel real and feel true, but aren't in alignment to the goal? Fear that this year and selling 15 million. Anita, I don't know any of these things, and they're all so exciting. You've done 15 million this year. Amazing. In real estate sales. That's huge. That's so exciting. Anita joined the Global Uni last year, and I think you doubled income this year, which is amazing. Was a fluke. Okay. So the thought there is it's a fluke, right? So if we believe the thought, let's take it's a fluke, right? What are you going to start doing? This is the emotional mental stuff, right? Remember, we talked about this in the Shamanic Map. If we have a thought, it creates a feeling and it leads to an action. So it's a fluke leads to a feeling of contraction. So the feeling of contraction, what's it tell you? Stop taking risks. You can't trust that this is your normal. So you've got to be really safe and careful. And then you might start like trying so hard that you start to sabotage, right? And so then what you create is it being a fluke. You create it being a fluke, not because it was, but because you thought it was, right? Jasmine, they might find it too expensive. The fixed cost of a 6-month mastermind might be too rigid. Cool. And so if we think in our minds that people are going to find it too expensive, how do we sell? We sell in a way of like, we put loads of offers, we put loads of bonuses, we don't hold the price. When we go to sell, we're super anxious, we don't hold the space. Like, it's really interesting when we look at, like, for example, free events that convert and free events that don't. Sometimes the strategy is exactly the same, but one person's thinking in their head they're going to find it too expensive and they're not going to buy. So when they go to sell, they do this 2-minute sale and it's really awkward and no one really understands the product, versus the person who believes that it's an absolute no-brainer and it's absolutely amazing, right? And so when they go to sell, they spend 15 minutes and they're like, and you know, and they really, really own the space. And that's the only distinction, right? Was how they were being emotionally and mentally as they did the strategy. So when we look at the emotional mental plane, and we've got loads of amazing examples in the chat, right? The thought of it's a fluke. I remember I've done that before. You hit this really high cash month and you go, it's not going to happen again. And then it doesn't happen, right? But then actually when you remind yourself, this is just who I am, it's natural and it's normal for me, it starts happening again. And you're like, wow, this is amazing, right? And so belief systems could be too expensive. It's too rigid. It's a fluke. It's not possible. There's not enough time, right? I counter those thoughts with an offer when I offer something different than any other realtor, and literally got a text about 2.5 million property whilst doing that in my head. I love that. Well, Anita knows the emotional mental work, and Anita's very good at the emotional mental work, right? So she knows what I'm going to say. But I love the fact, I feel like that you got another listing on this call. But that's a sign of how fast it can be. And you know, it's so crazy. You have a resistant thought, and then you choose expansion instead of contraction, and then you get a listing, right? Like sometimes actually the emotional mental work is so fast when we notice something, we don't believe it, and we choose differently, right? So the first part of the emotional mental work is picking a goal and then just noticing, right, what limiting patterns, what limiting thoughts come up for me as I think of this, right? And it could be, you know, any of the things that we've just mentioned. There's a whole plethora of limiting thoughts that we can have. So the work that we do in the emotional mental body, right, so you don't accidentally subconsciously sabotage yourself, however good your strategy is, right, is that, you know, in the multidimensional business system, we do inner child clearing, which clears the patterning, right? We also do lots of reprogramming the subconscious mind, right, which shifts your relationship, right, with the goal. And because you shift your relationship with the goal, you're actually able to take action on it. Another example for this is that I tried ads about 2.5 years ago, and they wouldn't work for me. And I was so frustrating because I put the money into it. I hired the agencies. I did all of the practical things, and it wouldn't work for me. And now we find them really quite easy. And so if I look at what changed, was that if I think about 2.5 years ago, I was so terrified of visibility, right? Because I had this feeling, if I'm going to be visible, everyone's going to hate me, and people are going to project stuff on me, and I'm not going to be able to hold it, and I'm going to do all of these things. And so I'd block myself, I'd sabotage. And so the more that I've healed my fear of being seen, healed my fear of conflict, healed my fear of other people misunderstanding me, the more that the strategies have worked. This is, again, emotional mental plane. In the emotional mental plane, nothing is as it seems. It's all of this stuff, right? Now, another part of the emotional mental plane is something that's called upper limits. And so we have an internal thermostat for how good we'll allow our lives to be. And people don't realize this because it's subconscious, right? So in my childhood, my mum was very anxious. My father's actually quite anxious. I didn't realize this until I left my family system and I did a lot of healing work, and then I had that reflected back to me, right? So my baseline for peace and joy wasn't very high. It was very anxious, you know, and this really played out in my business because, well, my mum had depression. You know, she was diagnosed at 19 until she passed away. And then there was a lot of health problems. And even though my family loved me and they were I had such a good family, right? There was a lot of anxiety. And so that became my baseline, right? And so think of a thermostat as like your normal emotional state is created usually in environment as a child, right? But, you know, it can also happen afterwards. For example, Craig thrives under pressure and urgency because at 16 he went to the military, and then they had, you know, the 2 wars, and then, you know, he didn't leave until he was 30. So his thermostat was like tapped in to kind of creating under this highly pressured state. It's where he felt comfortable. The thing is, what is like programmed as our internal state is what feels familiar and what feels comfortable. So scarcity can feel familiar and comfortable, anxiety can feel familiar and comfortable, anger can feel familiar and comfortable, frustration can feel familiar and comfortable, but it's really just a programming. Now, as we raise the bar in our business, what's going to happen is your life is going to get better. Okay, so let's say suddenly you've gone from struggling to pay rent, and now you can go shopping and spend 1,000 and it doesn't make a dent in your bank account, right? Suddenly the level of good that you're experiencing in your life is way superior, right, to your internal wiring. And so if we don't shift our wiring to have a higher level, and this is a big piece in the multidimensional business system because it really gets people to hold a higher level of good, what we start to do is we start to sabotage so we can get back to our familiar feelings. A lot of people do this. They get all of this good in business, Anita, the multidimensional business system bit will be good for you in this. They get all of, well, you've actually just worked through it, but you get all of this good come through in business. Life increases in this incredible way, right? And because it's unfamiliar, we don't trust it. And so what do we start to do? We start to spiral, we start to complain, we start to look for things to criticize, because all of this is doing is bringing down our state so we can get back to a more comfortable kind of place. Another example of upper limits is you go to a retreat, you're totally blissed out, it's amazing, but it's not your normal state. You've got this heightened state of peace, and then you get home, and the second that you get home, you have a fight with your husband, your partner, your brother, your sister, your mum, your dad, whatever it is. That's an example of an upper limit. You felt so peaceful, right, that you had to sabotage it through picking a fight. And so we have to understand that our internal set point is really set in childhood, or where there's a dominant experience in adulthood, like Craig in the military, right? Or maybe you've been in a corporate job and that's been very stressful, it's been a sales job, that becomes your internal wiring, right? And so to have an increased business and life, we have to raise our upper limits, right? So we stop subconsciously creating chaos. This is a big thing that I teach. I give people simple exercises to raise their thermostat so they don't, sabotage their hard work in the multidimensional business system for that reason, right? If you've come from a family that has been low economically or highly stressed, it's going to feel like a threat to your nervous system to be in a reality where things are good. And if we don't want to live in chaos our whole life, even though chaos is part of life and there's some element of chaos and mess that will always be part of it, we need to really look at this, okay? So upper limits, limiting patterns, and internal resistance around the action steps, right? So for example, I could give a sales course to 100 people, and what you would find is actually shocking. It's 2 to 10% if they don't do the emotional mental work, 2 to 10% take action. And so people go, oh, well, the other people, they're just lazy, they don't know how to follow through, and we go into these really hard business teachings, and that's not true, okay? That person's subconscious is resistant towards the action step. If you've got a massive fear of rejection, you don't know how to hold the feeling of rejection, the feeling of someone saying no to you. If you can't hold that in your body and you're trying to avoid that, you're not going to go into sales. You're not going to do your sales every single day, because that feeling of rejection, you're trying to avoid it, and so you sabotage your goal, right? For example, for me, I had this massive fear of rejection underneath, and that made me not want to get visible. So I would sabotage all of our visibility lead generation stuff until I got comfortable with, it's okay. If someone doesn't like me, I can be with that feeling, right? So this emotional mental work is clearing our wiring around the goal, the action steps to get to the goal, and also raising our upper limits, right? It's three-pronged, three-pillar within the emotional mental body. And this is the work that makes the strategy work. Without this, right, the people that get the results with the strategy, the people that are already naturally internally aligned to the results, right? Which is not most people. Most people need to do this with the goal, especially if you're like me. I'm here for to experience all that life has got. And so I'm always increasing the goal, but not because from lack, but because there's more, right? And I'm on this spiritual journey through my business. At every new level of income, at every new level of happiness, at every new level of love, at every new level of joy, at every new level of purpose, we have to clear the fear of getting what we want. And we have to create internal alignment with the goal through our thoughts, through our feelings, and through our upper limits, especially if we've been used to chronic stress. A new level of peace is going to feel frightening and unfamiliar at the beginning. And many people create unnecessary stress in business because it's their internal normal, which is why we do this with business owners as well. Okay, let's do this. Okay, crazy, Anita's put there. I'm so happy, I love it. I feel like, Anita, you've got quite a few listings when we've done calls, and it's always exciting. The last listing that you got when we did a call, I think was around 1 something, and so I love the fact that this is literally the double, which is amazing. Okay, so I'm going to put this into the chat, and let's start looking at ourselves, okay? Because if you're listening to this, even if you don't share it in the chat because you don't want people to see it, please still rate things, because like I said, this is a diagnostic system. It's not just listen to Hannah talk. Do you know what I mean? It's actually apply this to your life, because that's where you're going to start to notice something. So 0 to 10, okay? From 0 to 10, how internally are you aligned with the goal? Okay? 0 means you feel a lot of resistance around the goal. 10 feels like you've got no resistance around the goal at all, right? If you're anything lower than an 8, you need to do the emotional and mental work. 0 to 10 is how equipped are you to deal with upper limits rapidly. 0 to 10 is how much internal resistance have you got around the action steps, okay? So 0 would be you've got no resistance. 10 is that you've got lots of resistance. Anything above, everything above 2, right? Again, shows you've got to do the emotional mental work. And then 0 to 10, internal resistance around the goal. Yeah? Anita's put, just broke a record selling 2.5 home last week. This is so exciting. What's the commission on a 2.5 million property, Anita? So Jasmine's put 10 on resistance. Okay, cool. So then you know there, Jasmine, that if we don't really anchor down and do the work around the resistance around that goal, then we're going to sabotage that, right? And so that's now your highest priority action. And Jasmine's also a client. So you can go to day 2 now in the multidimensional business system and go watch that day, because you're going to find that really helpful, right? And again, this is why people hear all of this information, you know, about strategy, and we see that there's quite a high failure rate in normal, you know, reality. And it's because people aren't taught this stuff alongside it. Yay. Okay, Anita got an 80K payout for that. I love that. You're on both sides. This just gets better and better. So best number ever, best biggest sale ever. And you're on both sides of the sale. Brilliant. 80K commission. We love it. Your next thing, Anita, is going to be a 6-figure commission. Watch this fucking space. 6-figure commission. It's going to happen. Okay. 9 alignment. Brilliant. Amazing. I love this sphere. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay, let's go into the spiritual plane of business. For some of you guys, you might find it helpful to go through this a few times if it's new, to really get this framework in your head, right? We've got the physical body, the 6 pillars of the physical body. We've got the emotional mental body, the 3 pillars of the emotional mental body, and now we've got the spiritual body. It is my belief system and the way that I live my life that my business is my spiritual path. And my business, right, is my spiritual path, meaning that everything that happens in my business, right, either gives me what I want to manifest or unlocks a new level of internal spiritual fulfillment. That's how I live my life, and that's how I build business. And I build business this way as a rejection of what we've been taught, which is the more successful you are, the more stressed you'll be, the more money that you've got, that, you know, we've got all of these terrible belief systems, which I go into many of our products and programs. I'm of the belief system that if I do the internal work with the outer work, that when my finances increase, so does my internal fulfillment. And this is really important. And it also means if I see everything in my business as part of the spiritual path, when things that are hard happen, because sometimes they do, instead of seeing them as wrong or bad or shouldn't be happening, I see them as part of my manifestation of my own internal healing. And they're here to set me free. So this means that it's quite easy for me to lean in to the things that happen in business instead of making them wrong. And the more that we can lean into things in the business instead of making them wrong, the more that every single obstacle becomes a blessing. And so this is the specific way that I teach business. And this is very different to what you see out there. This is what you see maybe in many spiritual paths like Kabbalah, but it's not very often taught in the business space. This may be changing. But what I've found with my clients is that their ability to whip through things that are wrong and bad is extremely fast, and it leads them, well, just like Anita demonstrated for us all on the call, they whip through things, don't believe it, shift energetically, boom, they get the result. Whereas if you resist the hard lesson in business, you slow down the blessings. And that's what I'm going to speak to. Okay. I did that backwards. I'm more 4.5 in fear. Love it. Okay, amazing. Brilliant. Cool. Thank you for everyone putting those numbers. So the 3 pillars in the spiritual body of business is 1, knowing how to alchemize blocks into blessings. Okay. Now I've just kind of spoken to this. An example of this was that in 2022, and I've told this story many times, I ended up being in a position, August, it was my 30th birthday month, right? So everything that we could have thought in our mind about this shouldn't be happening, this is wrong, that can go through, right? It was my 30th birthday, it was August, it was my birthday month, and we ended up within the business and within my life having a 99.5, just under 6-figure expense month. And, you know, bearing in mind the year before I made 6 figures, and then that year was the first year that I made, you know, over 500,000. We hadn't hit 500,000 yet. You know, this 6-figure expense month felt extremely overwhelming. And the expenses were because when I scaled at the beginning, and this is why I'm always like, get yourself a coach. Like, and I say to my people, be in the VIP group, ask me these questions, because I'm so open. I've got nothing to fucking prove. I'm going to tell you the things that I've done well, and I'm going to tell you the things that I have not done well. And my clients sometimes get more from me being truly honest about the things that I haven't done well, that helps them avoid those potholes, right? But one of the things that I did at the beginning is that my team cost up to 20,000 a month. Like sometimes just life and team could cost 30,000 a month, which is a huge amount of expenses, because you're beginning the day of the month and it's like you've got to make at least 20 to 30,000, right, to even have any profit, even €1 profit, right? And so that was a month where the rental, Craig and I broke up, the rental 6-month payment was due, the team was extortionate. And I was kind of faced with, you know, we'd just broken up. I was in this house. It was early September. And I was thinking, I'd paid everything, by the way. I'd already paid it all. And I was thinking, fucking hell, like this is, you know, this is intense thing for me to hold. And I leaned into this spiritual work of, okay, well, what's my lesson, right? Which we could go into, but that'd be another workshop. What's my lesson? And can I come to non-negotiable, non-circumstantial faith? The energy of the spiritual body is faith. Faith, faith, faith. And I did lots and lots of the blockage to blessing work, and I did lots of the energetic work, which I'll speak to again at the end of this. And September ended up being our first 6-figure month, and I ended up being 6K in profit for that month. And it was one of those things that was so surreal. But I always tell this story because it was one of these moments where I couldn't afford to be lazy in my internal alignment. And I know a lot of people, and maybe even past versions of Hannah, would have been so distressed by the expenses that I would have gone into contraction and been like, I'm not paying for anything else, I'm going to fire this person. And so what happens a lot in business is people build momentum and then they have a fear response. They go into contraction and they stop doing the things, right? Like firing all your team members. They stop doing the things that's actually going to lead to the expansion. And it was being able to hold that fear, because there was a lot of fear, transmuting it into faith, looking at the blocks internally, transmuting it into blessings, that led to me being in profit, even though I'd never done a 6-figure month before at this point, right? And so this is why part of the multidimensional business system, I've got a repeatable system that you can plug in and play, right, for whenever you face a block like this. Now, to be clear, it doesn't need to be like a big money bill. You know, I had a client who had a pattern come up in our VIP group, which I support, and she shared it via WhatsApp. I'm obviously not going to tell you guys because it's private and it's confidential. But I just said, I reminded her, come back to faith on, you know, because the soul, basically the essence of the soul, the message of the soul is everything is happening for your good. Everything is perfect. Everything is healing you. And just coming back to that faith, it was extraordinary. She worked one day and she had just under a multi 5-figure sales week, right? So even when the action wasn't there, the energetics was so strong, the soul process was so strong that the financial result happened anyway. And this is a hard thing for people to understand when they're so used to only building from the mind. Yes, we need the physical foundation, and clear your emotional mental reality. Do your soul work. Anchor into what you want, which is what I'll come to now. So a pillar, knowing how to alchemize blocks into blessings. I've got processes that I share with my clients for this, especially in the multidimensional business system. Number 2 is faith. Non-circumstantial faith. And people only want to have faith when they've got evidence. And the problem is, if you've got to have faith if you've got to have evidence to have faith, you'll never manifest what you want, because faith is a prerequisite. It's prior. It's the previous component to having of the thing, right? And so if you need evidence, if you need it to see it, to believe it, you're going to end up in these horrendous loops where nothing fully manifests, even if you're doing all of the right things, because faith is the ingredient that you're missing. Okay, and then the final thing that's the pillar, so blockage to blessings, faith, right, which is kind of part of having spirit in the strategies, right? And something that I'll say about spirit and having the, you know, and having the faith in the strategies you taking them, is that I've really sabotaged my success when I worked with a very masculine coach and I learned these lessons from him, and he'd be like, got to implement it perfectly. And it would be this rigidity and tension and fear that when I'd go and do the strategies, I wouldn't get the results. Whereas when I've just had the faith and I've had the spirit in it and I've been in it, I've done things imperfectly and they've blown up in insane bonkers ways. Because who I was being, which is kind of getting to the energy body, was more important than the perfection of the strategy. And so sometimes when we look at the spiritual body, we can see that the mind is too in the physical. It's trying to control, plan, contract, and that actually blocks that greater flow. And so the spiritual body of business reminds us to come back to faith and trust and, you know, the soul of it instead of the perfection of it. And what we find when people are really anchored into the spiritual body, the physical body stuff that you do works tenfold better. Okay, but the third pillar is intuition as a strategy, and I spoke to this prior. Your intuition is one of the most extraordinary things that you can develop. Now, in the multidimensional business system, I teach you my strategy, my intuition strategy to use in your morning practice that really anchors you into intuition as much as practical action, right? But something that I see with my certification clients, the thing that they develop is their connection to their body and how to use their body. And so in the in-person training, something that we saw is people started having all of these psychic gifts appear. And I see this every single year. And actually developing these things within yourself is extraordinary because you can really trust intuition. There was a story that I told in the certification that I'll tell you guys quickly now because I do think it's important. And it's about, you know, at the beginning, I was selling probably one-to-one sessions for like a few €100, maybe €600 for 6 one-to-one sessions. And I remember this girl coming to me and she said, Hannah, I'm looking for a job and I've got these 2 interviews and which one should I go for? And, you know, one of the interviews, let me just plug this in so it doesn't run out of battery. One of the interviews was, ooh, what am I doing? Looked great on paper, right? Looked amazing on paper, mentally, logically, right? It looked perfect. It was like, it's got a higher wage, this is the type of people there, and all of these things, right? And the other one didn't look as high, you know, level on paper, but she had this real feeling, this draw towards it that she couldn't explain. And I said to her, go for the one that you feel drawn towards, because you don't need to logically understand it, but you can trust this internal intuition system. Anyway, her mind won, as it does many times, and she picked the one that looked good on paper. And I don't know if you guys have ever done this. This is, you know, even with picking a romantic partner, I've picked partners which looked good on paper, but internally my body was saying no, and I overrid that because my mind was like, oh yeah, but they're attractive and they do this and they do that. And then you learn the lesson. It ended up being an absolute fucking shit show, and she ended up leaving and going to the other one. And in the other one, she ended up getting, you know, a pay increase and all of these things. And if she'd listened to her intuition, she could have skipped that really chaotic process. And so business intuition, and you see this in so many high players, is a strategy. You know, I saw, what's her name, Layla Hormozi, talk about she was going to be involved in a business deal and they were all putting a few million into this real estate project and it looked so good on paper. But just before going to sleep, you know, one night she got this feeling of something's off. And so she took her money out the next day, like hours before they went live with the deal, and all their friends ended up losing millions. And she didn't, because she had an intuitive feeling. So tapping into this intuitive feeling that we've all got is one of the best things that you can do. We've learned that life is safe from the mind, but when we're only tapped into the mind, we're missing all of these other signals that we get from everything else that's actually going to lead to greater success. Again, this is one of the things that I really teach people. They really develop within the certification. It's one of those things that you've got an ROI on for life, because it's never not going to be helpful to know how to use your intuition. But I teach a very specific intuitive process within the multidimensional business system as well. So let's look through this, right? As 3 pillars, 0 to 10. Put in the chat, 0 to 10, how equipped do you feel to alchemize business blocks quickly and repeatedly into blessings? Right, 0 to 10, what's your ability to hold non-circumstantial faith, even when life doesn't look like it's working? 0 to 10, what's your knowledge and mastery on how to use intuition as a business tool? I'd love to hear. And then we'll go to energy and we'll close up. And I'll share ways that you guys can do this work with me. Because you're probably seeing right now that the way that I teach business is way more complete and way more integrated than what's normally available. Yeah, beautiful. Anita, 9, well, we just saw you do it. I love how it's so funny, you know, I've had clients that have come to sessions that I've done all year, and then we do something free and they come there as well. And I'm like, that's a good sign, isn't it? I love that. I really like it. Okay, amazing. As you guys are putting your numbers there, let's recap. We've got the physical body, okay? 6 pillars of the physical body are business model, repeatable, client acquisition, messaging that converts, repeatable conversion mechanism, delivery and client results, how to map your year. Emotional mental is limiting patterns, upper limits, and internal resistance around the action steps. Spiritual is knowing how to alchemize blocks into blessings, knowing how to hold non-circumstantial faith, and actually just being in mentorship is such a long-term mentorship is a big thing for that. Like sometimes when you wobble, just having a mentor that's holding the faith with you is part of like you making that leap, right? And then knowledge on how to use intuition as a business tool. Okay, and this brings us to energy. And so energy is not really about pillars. Energy is about understanding how to use energy for manifestation whilst holding all of the rest of the things. Brilliant. So energy, this is the plane of manifestation in business, right? So let's go back to that 6-figure expense month that I've spoken to. I not only held gratitude and faith non-circumstantially, I also aligned with my lived desire, right? So I aligned with what I wanted this to take me to. I used one of the many processes that I teach in this. So I remember as I was going through these expenses, you know, I gave myself 2-3 days to be scared. And I will do this, by the way, when I'm feeling big emotions. I'm like, I'm going to give you this period of time to be in this pity party. And after that, we're moving out of it, right? Many of us are very addicted to these emotional cycles and it's not helpful. But that is a bigger conversation for another day. So I gave myself time to feel it. I didn't suppress it. I didn't push it down. I allowed it to be felt. And then I decided, well, where do I want this to take me? And that's really the question, right, within the energy plane. The thing that I'm living in business now, where do I want it to take me? Right? And this is the mechanism for quantum leaping. This is the mechanism for illogical results. This is the mechanism for success. And I decided, and I remember deciding it, that I wanted to take me to the biggest sales run of my life. And it happened that way. But it didn't happen that way by accident. It happened that way because I created it intentionally. And so the energy plane is all about the laws of conscious creation, right? I remember thinking to myself, you know, and energy plane, in the Shamanic Map, we talk about it being represented by the eagle, right? And in Shamanic medicine, they would talk about the eagle because if you think about way back then, what's the highest in the sky? The highest thing in the sky is an eagle. And the eagle is way up high and the eagle can see everything below. And so the eagle from way up high is asking, well, where do I drop? Where do I go? Where do I land, right? And so we have to remember that we also have that eagle eye view in a moment. Whatever you're going through in your life, you need to be able to have the ability to zoom up and ask, this is where I am, but where do I want to be? And so within the energy plane, we then align with where we want to land. right? We don't just go, I hope this happens. It's like going to the airport and saying, I want to go to Timbuktu, I want to go to Fiji, I want to go to London, I want to go. You're not going to get a ticket because they're going to say to you, ma'am, we'll give you a ticket when you fucking decide and you commit. Energetically, vibrationally, certainly, right? And so this is why I said at the beginning, you've got to decide your success is inevitable now, because that's equivalent to the legal eagle learning and knowing where to land. This is critical because your decision is informing the quantum field, right? So step one of creating from the energy plane is a choice. You go to the airport and you say, I want to go to Hawaii. Now, the lady that's selling tickets at the airport doesn't think anything about Hawaii to London. She's got no prejudice. You've got it. Oh, getting to Hawaii is going to be harder than going to London. That's your stuff. We've got to understand that. That's emotional, mental, body stuff. We're not talking about that anymore. So step one is you're making a choice. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm getting 5 sales. I'm getting 40 sales. I'm whatever it is, right? Now, step two is living from that chosen reality now. Okay? And so one of the laws that we have to remember in the energy plane, and there's lots of laws within the energy plane, and I teach this within the multidimensional business system, but one of the laws that we have to understand from the energy plane is that your present moment is a physical manifestation of your past alignment. Your past alignment is showing up on the screen of your life now. To create a different future in the present moment, you have to start thinking from your desired future in faith and gratitude that it is happening. This is how you manifest. So let's say your desire is to have 5 sales, right? From for the rest of the year, or if you're Anita, to hold that 15 million in sales year. I love it. I feel like you can do more, Anita. But let's say I'm going to be conservative. Let's say 20 million. So if we're holding, we're creating that from the present moment. Remember, because our past thinking and feeling creates our future. So to create our future, right, we have to start shifting our thinking and feeling in the present moment, not when there's a change. So for Anita, right, who's going to do 20 million in 2026, right, she's going to now start practicing that alignment now, and it can show up whenever it is, and it's clearly already working, right? So from that internal alignment, she'll be asking herself, well, what am I thinking if I've just made 20 million this year? Made 20 million in sales. It's not her commissions, obviously. Sold 20 million in houses, right? So Anita's thinking, fucking hell, this is so easy for me. It's like, it's so weird. It's like reality bends to me. It's like every day I wake up and there's a new house, right? Can you feel that alignment, that talking, and the feeling, right? If it's done, she's not scrambling. She's not fearful. She's not like, it's not going to happen for me, right? She's like, oh my God, that was easy. But then she's also taking action. And this is where people really screw up. She's taking action from that desired reality in the present moment. And so if she's taking action, right, what would that look like? It's looking like, I've just done 20 million in house sales this year. What's the action I'm going to take? I'm going to allow myself to have that spa trip. I'm going to allow myself to buy that dress. I don't know if Anita wants to buy a dress. I like buying a dress, so I'm going to project that on Anita, right? It's like interesting when I talk about the expenses story, everything within my body wanted to contract and never buy anything ever again. But I knew that if I did that, my dominant frequency would be lack. And I remember the weekend that I decided to shift vibrationally. And it was actually remarkable. It was so fast. It's not always this fast. Sometimes it's very fast and sometimes it's not fast. And it's really important to not make a story around that, because if not, we'll interpret as it taking longer, as it's not working, and then you've lost the game, right? But I remember that weekend thinking to myself, okay, well, if I've just made all of this money back and more, and I'm in profit, what would I be doing? And I love shopping. I love clothes, I love beauty, I love spas, I love like aesthetically pleasing places. So if it was done, what would I be doing? I would be shopping. And so I made a decision. I wasn't going to go to the most expensive designer store that was going to stress me the fuck out. But I went to this, I lived in Ibiza at the time, this market in Ibiza, and I allowed myself to purchase 2 dresses, about 100 euros each. So it wasn't a huge amount of money in what I was used to spending, but I was so conscious to not contract and block the flow, and to expand and lead in and allow the flow. And it was actually that Monday that the sales just popped the fuck off, right? And so the law that we want to come to in the energy body is be, do, have. Be the being, thinking, feeling, right? From the goal, right? Do from the goal, and then you have it. If you want to build the wealth, you've got to think, feel, and act from that wealthy place now. Now, really, we say be, do, have, but the being and the doing is happening at the same time. The state of being is what you're thinking and you're feeling and you're vibrating at. Your doing is the action steps. So your being and your doing have to be from the goal now, and that kind of works synergistically. And eventually that leads to having. Now, most people, what happens is they get stuck in this if-when, right? Well, if I get the money, then I'll get the coaching course. If I find the love of my life, then I'll like myself. But the simple fact that you're in this, well, I'll feel that or I'll do that when I get that thing, is the exact thing that stops it manifesting. And it was fascinating. I've spoken about this documentary, Men and War, right? And I really recommend going to watch it. I really enjoyed it. And obviously I watch all of this stuff because he's ex-military, right? And I end up kind of being exposed to this whole world that I would not be exposed to if we were not in a relationship. But I really appreciate that I am. And so we were watching it, and there's this big Navy SEAL, he'll be late 40s, 50s, I don't know, I'm not very good at ages, and I feel it's so hard to know. And he does this plant medicine trip. And they're very good with how they teach plant medicine, because they don't teach one plant medicine is going to change your whole life. They teach about plant medicine and integration afterwards. And without the integration afterwards, things are still going to come up. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, this big Navy SEAL, and he has this trip, and he realizes that all of his trauma and the stuff that came up wasn't even from being in the wars, it was from childhood. And he's shown this programming, which is the work that I do with people without plant medicine, but he's shown this programming, and he's shown that as a boy you felt unsafe. And you thought erroneously that if you got big and strong, that you would no longer feel in danger. But the thing that really screwed everything up for him was that he did get big and strong, but he still felt unsafe. And he realized that safety had to come within. And when he created safety within, he would feel safety, and he would have safety in his life, right? And so people get stuck in if-whens for the whole of their reality. And the thing is, if you don't shift it, you're never going to manifest it. And you can tell yourself, well, it's because manifestation doesn't work or any of those things, but that's lazy thinking. The truth is, you're stuck in an if-when, right? And this is a good thing for you guys to reflect on. What are you putting into the future because you'll think that you'll do it when you've got the thing? But that's stopping you from having the thing. I remember when I was manifesting Craig, if we're going to say this, I didn't know his name was going to be Craig. Craig loves his name because it means big rock, and he feels in resonance to that, and it makes me laugh because I just think men and women are very different. I would never want to be called big rock, but obviously masculine and feminine qualities are different. But anyway, I'd been so desperate to find love in my 20s. 25, Marrakesh markets, here we come, shopping dress, exactly, all of those things, right? I don't know if Melanie showed you, Anita, she bought this most beautiful bag in the Marrakesh markets, which was absolutely stunning last year, right? Anyway, so in my mid-20s, I tell this, it's true, it sounds ridiculous now in my 30s, but in my mid-20s, I was about 25, 26, and I felt like everyone around me had met their love of their life, and I felt like I was the only one in the world that hadn't met someone. And this wasn't true, but this is how I felt. This was my internal alignment, and I felt so desperate to meet someone. And it was incredible because when you try and force something or you try and grip something, then you lose it, right? That's the law of the universe. Sometimes the more that we try to force something, the more that we lose it, right? And so I was just in this state of probably like hypervigilance around love and real desperation. Desperation is not magnetic. And I was very, very desperate. And it was because I didn't feel, yes, the yellow leather one, it's amazing. It's because I didn't love myself, right? And I was kind of in this idea that if I meet someone and they love me, then that's going to make me feel better about me. And I was seeking internally, subconsciously, I didn't realize, I was just seeking acceptance, and I was seeking peace, and I was seeking stability. After my mum dying, I really felt like most of my younger years were kind of around my mother. And it was hard, you know, it was hard. And I wanted to have a foundation. I wanted to feel that someone was there for me in my family. It'd been around my mum in my 20s, right? You know, my role as a daughter had been flipped to really as a more of a mother role from a pretty young age, right? And so I was kind of desperate for this love that I didn't have inside. And I was convinced that if I met the perfect person, that they were going to fix that. And the more that I tried to force this, the more that no one that I met wanted to be with me, basically. And the more that I got rejected again and again and again and again and again, until I realized, well, clearly I'm creating this. And I came to the manifestation work and I had to ask myself, well, energetically, if I was in a relationship, who would I be internally, right? Because I was in an when I'm loved by someone else, I'll love myself. When I'm chosen by someone else, I'll feel safe. When I meet someone, then I'll like myself. And I came to this really huge breakthrough. And I know it sounds so simple. And it was like, well, I'm going to have to love me. And I remember I spent all of these months working on, like, every single day, like working on loving myself. As cliche and corny that sounds, it took me about 3-4 months, right, of dedicated work, the work that I teach. And I remember getting to such a point of pleasure with me and such a point of peace with myself that I started becoming magnetic. And it's like my reality shifted. And instead of me like chasing men and wanting to be loved, I suddenly felt like there were so many men in the world that wanted to be with me. And it was such a bizarre thing. And I remember one day being on my little bicycle, because I used to have this little bicycle with a basket, and it was brilliant, and I should get a bicycle with a basket again because it's just fantastic. And I would cycle up and down, you know, Malaga, I lived there in the front of the sea. And I remember one day, and I always tell this story because it's so etched on my mind. And I remember thinking, I'm so certain that I'm going to meet someone that I don't care if it's tomorrow or in 5 years, because I'm in such love of myself. I feel so complete. I don't feel that there is something that I'm chasing in someone external to me. I felt so good. And I met Craig 3 weeks later. And Craig, from the instant that I met him, he was like, I want Hannah. He waited 3 months for us to even have a kiss, because I was unsure on him because he had a bit of a player reputation. And I was like, I was just, you know, I was so beyond, I didn't want to be chosen. I was like, if you're a dickhead, I'm not down. Like, it was so like clear for me, the love for myself meant that I wasn't going to enter a relationship that wasn't, you know, brilliant for me or helpful for me, or I wasn't going to be with a man that didn't choose me completely, right? But this inner alignment had to come first. And then Craig, a man choosing me to that level, came second. So I had to find that internal love, and then I had the relationship, right? And so some of you guys have got to change your relationship with money, and then you'll get the money. Some of you guys have to change something internally first, and then what's going to happen is you're going to have that thing that you've been chasing that keeps feeling like it slips through your fingers, right? And so that's the energy plane of business. When you get the money, when you get the love, when you get the health, I will, means that you'll never get there. In the quantum field, only the present moment and the signal that you're emitting to the quantum field exists. So you've got to be in the vibration and the frequency and the being of having what you want now. Now, I know that that sounds super esoteric, and this is why I teach this in practical, tangible techniques. The energy body of MDB, right, is how to anchor in limitless possibility and prosperity, how to live in the frequency of the best case scenario. I teach an exercise called the energetic bubble of success, which is really helpful. It's why we go into the laws of the universe that govern wealth and creation and love and everything else. And we really anchor into who are you becoming and anchoring into that, right? So you bring that future potential to you now, right? So the energy body is really mastering the flow of life. And instead of becoming the passive receiver of whatever, you are the director of the flow. And so for the energy body, 0 to 10, what do you feel like your level of mastery is for directing the flow of life?